The midday sun pressed against the glass front of Beaumont's, scattering faint gold across the polished tile floors. Tiana Brooks pushed through the heavy door, her black non-slip shoes clicking softly as she stepped inside. The scent of roasting garlic and fresh linens filled the air, all meant to whisper refinement, prestige, belonging. Tiana paused by the hostess stand, adjusting her apron, tucking a loose curl back into her bun. She caught her reflection in the mirror behind the wine rack. Eyes alert, mouth steady. Ready. No one could accuse her of sloppiness today. The dining room was half full, a few early lunch guests murmuring over their menus. The place had that hush of money, the kind that asked servers to glide, not walk, to disappear just enough to keep things perfect. From across the room, Mr. Caldwell, the general manager, lifted a hand, summoning the servers like children to a principal's office. Tiana joined the small cluster, 5 servers total, standing neatly near the service station. Caldwell's mouth was set in its usual tight line. He clapped his hands once, sharp. "Listen up," he said. His voice was low, even, but carried the weight of someone used to being obeyed. "We have a high-profile guest coming in today. Very high-profile. And I don't want anyone," his eyes skimmed over the group, lingering half a second longer on Tiana than necessary, making them uncomfortable. Jason, a server with slick-back hair and too much cologne, raised a hand halfway. "You want us to treat them like a regular customer or—" Caldwell's lip twitched, almost a smile but not quite. "Treat them like furniture. Quiet, invisible service. No hovering, no chit-chat, no selfies, no special treatment. You take the order, you deliver the food, you walk away." Tiana felt a small knot tighten in her chest. It wasn't just about being professional. It was about knowing her place, about remembering that people like her, young black women from the South Side, weren't part of the scene Beaumont wanted to sell. Caldwell continued, his voice crisp. "One slip-up, and you'll be off the floor. Permanently." He let the words hang there, looking each of them over like he was daring someone to test him. Tiana kept her face neutral, her hands folded neatly in front of her apron. She had learned early that men like Caldwell didn't need a reason. They just needed a feeling, and today, that feeling was one of brittle control. The group broke apart slowly, servers heading back to their stations. Tiana turned toward the espresso machine, checking cups, wiping down the counter with mechanical care. "Bet it's some movie star," Jason muttered as he passed her. "Probably won't even tip." He chuckled under his breath, a sound that made Tiana's skin crawl. Tiana didn't respond. She finished stacking the saucers, lined up the sugars, smoothed the folded napkins. Everything in its place. Everything correct. Still, as she moved through her side work, she couldn't shake the feeling curling in the pit of her stomach, the one that always came before something went wrong. It wasn't just a lunch shift anymore. It was a test, and whether she passed or failed had nothing to do with the quality of her service. The lunch crowd thinned to a low hum, the kind that made every clink of silverware sound sharp, every dropped plate a catastrophe. Tiana worked silently, moving from table to table with practiced ease. No wasted motion, no unnecessary words. She had just finished resetting a booth when the front door swung open. It was nothing dramatic. No flashing cameras. No entourage. Just a tall man in jeans, sneakers, and a simple black baseball cap pulled low over his face. Sunglasses hid his eyes, but his walk, loose, self-assured, said more than any name could. Tiana's heart skipped once, then steadied. Michael Jordan. It wasn't just the stature, the iconic build. It was the way the air shifted when he entered, the tiny ripple of recognition that passed through the staff. Jason, behind the bar, froze mid-polish. Mia, the hostess, straightened so fast her clipboard nearly toppled over. Caldwell emerged from the office, lurking just inside the door like a shadow. Watching. "Michael, Mr. Jordan," she corrected herself silently, paused, scanning the room. He didn't seem in a hurry. He didn't seem to need anything. He just stood there, giving the staff a moment to show him what kind of place Beaumont's was. Tiana saw it immediately, the flicker of hesitation, the guarded patience in his stance. He's waiting to see if he's welcome. And for a moment, no one moved. No greeting. No smile. Just an awkward, stretching silence. Tiana wiped her hands on her apron, picked up a menu, and crossed the floor. Her steps were light but sure. Not rushed. Not performative. Just human. "Good afternoon, sir," she said, her voice warm but professional. "Welcome to Beaumont's. Just yourself today?" Michael tilted his head slightly, looking at her through the lenses of his sunglasses. A beat passed, then he nodded once. "Yes, ma'am." The smallest flicker of a smile touched his mouth. Not a celebrity smile, not a forced one. Real. Tiana smiled back, gesturing toward a corner booth near the window. It was one of the quieter spots, slightly shielded by a half wall of frosted glass. A place where he could disappear a little, if he wanted to. "Right this way, if that's all right," she said. Michael followed without a word. As she set the menu down, she kept her posture easy, her tone light. "Can I start you off with something to drink?" "Water's fine," he said. His voice was low, rich, somehow both casual and deliberate. Tiana nodded, tucking the menu neatly onto the table. "I'll be right back." She moved efficiently, feeling Caldwell's eyes burning into her back from across the room. She could almost hear the unspoken warnings. Don't linger. Don't engage. Don't screw this up. But when she returned with the water, Michael looked up at her. Really looked. And in that moment, she made a quiet decision. She wasn't going to treat him like a burden, or a spectacle, or an obligation. She was going to treat him like a man who deserved the same dignity she offered every guest. "Is this your first time with us?" she asked lightly, setting the glass down. Michael's mouth twitched again, the hint of a private joke. "Something like that," he said. Tiana grinned, just a little. "Well, if you need any recommendations, I'm happy to help." He gave a small nod, a subtle permission to stay a second longer, not because he demanded it, but because he appreciated it. From across the room, Tiana could feel Caldwell's stare tightening, his posture stiff behind the host stand. Tiana took a tiny breath and stepped back, giving Michael space without rushing him. "I'll give you a minute to look things over," she said. As she turned, she caught the faintest glimpse of Jason whispering to Mia, both of them smirking behind their hands. The message was clear, she's pushing it. But Tiana didn't care. She hadn't crossed a line. She hadn't fawned or flirted or drawn attention. She had simply offered the basic human kindness that Beaumont's seemed to ration like champagne, only for those they deemed worthy. And somewhere deep inside, she knew, even if it cost her, she wasn't sorry. Tiana barely slept. All night, she replayed the shift in her head, every word, every glance, every breath she took in that spotless dining room. She couldn't find a single thing she would have done differently. And yet, as the sunrise bled thin over the south side rooftops, she couldn't shake the knot curling in her gut. The city streets felt sharper that morning. Every honk, every shout of a street vendor, every rattle of the L train overhead, it all grated against her skin like sandpaper. She tightened her coat around her shoulders and walked faster. When she pushed through Beaumont's side door, the first thing she noticed was how quiet it was. Jason was leaning against the counter, arms crossed, a sly little smile flickering at the edges of his mouth. Mia, the hostess, was arranging silverware at the podium but kept sneaking glances toward the kitchen. The air felt wrong. Thick. Expectant. Tiana hung up her coat and straightened her apron with hands that didn't want to stop trembling. Then she heard it, the soft creak of Mr. Caldwell's office door swinging open. "Tiana," he called. His voice was flat, toneless. Every instinct told her to run. But she didn't. She lifted her chin, smoothed her hair, and walked toward him. Caldwell sat behind his desk, a tidy stack of papers in front of him. He didn't look up right away. Just tapped a pen against the wood in a slow, even rhythm. Finally, he spoke. "We're letting you go." The words didn't make sense at first. They floated there between them, absurd and impossible. Tiana blinked, willing herself not to show anything. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice steady, almost gentle. "It's not working out," Caldwell said, his eyes flicking up, then away. Your conduct yesterday was unprofessional. Tiana's breath caught, sharp and painful. I treated a guest with respect. I did my job. Caldwell exhaled through his nose, a sound of irritation more than regret. That's not the point. When we say minimal interaction, we mean it. You made yourself visible. You crossed a line. Tiana stared at him. She had served the man water. She had offered a recommendation. She hadn't fawned. She hadn't gushed. She hadn't even said his name out loud. Her heart pounded so hard she could feel it in her fingertips. This isn't about professionalism, she said quietly. This is about making sure people like me stay in the background. Caldwell's jaw tightened. You can pick up your last paycheck next Friday. And just like that, it was done. Tiana untied her apron slowly, folding it once, twice, laying it carefully on the empty chair beside her. She didn't slam it down. She didn't curse or cry. She refused to give him the satisfaction. At the door, she paused and turned back. You know this isn't right, she said. Caldwell didn't answer. Outside, the November wind cut through her coat like needles. She crossed the parking lot, her shoes crunching over bits of gravel, head held high even though her body felt hollow. When she climbed into her car, she gripped the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles turned white. It wasn't just the job she was losing. It was the dream. The careful ladder she had been climbing rung by cautious rung gone. Her phone buzzed on the passenger seat, rattling against the cracked vinyl. She ignored it at first, staring blankly through the windshield. But it kept buzzing. And buzzing. Finally, she grabbed it with a shaking hand. Unknown number. She hesitated, thumb hovering over the screen, then answered. Hello. A deep, steady voice came through the line, familiar in a way that made her heart trip over itself. Ms. Brooks? This is Michael Jordan. Tiana froze, breath caught halfway in her chest. I heard what happened, he said. His voice wasn't loud, but there was a steel thread woven through it. A thread that pulled her back from the edge of despair. And for the first time that morning, Tiana let herself hope that maybe, just maybe, this wasn't the end of her story. At first, Tiana thought she had imagined it. Michael Jordan didn't call girls like her. He didn't waste time on a nobody waitress from the South Side. But the voice was real. The concern in it was real. And now, sitting alone in her tiny living room, wrapped in a blanket that smelled faintly of detergent and hope, she clutched her phone like a lifeline. Michael, Mr. Jordan, had been brief, apologetic, angry on her behalf in a way that didn't feel performative. I'm sorry you were treated like that, he said. I want to meet with you. Tiana agreed because what else could she do? But when the call ended, the silence of her apartment swallowed her whole. The shame came crashing down. It wasn't supposed to be like this. She had done everything right, showed up early, worked double shifts, kept her head down when others joked and sneered and flirted with customers they thought were worth impressing. And now she was here, jobless, humiliated, a charity case. She curled tighter into herself, pressing her forehead against the curve of her knees. The cheap radiator clanked in the corner, offering little warmth. The city outside her window moved on without her, sirens in the distance, someone shouting about a lost dog, the rumble of a bus pulling away. Tiana squeezed her eyes shut. I'm not supposed to need saving. That was the rule she had built her whole life around. You work harder. You outlast. You don't wait for miracles. The idea of Michael Jordan, the Michael Jordan, swooping in to fix what had been broken made her stomach churn. It felt wrong, weak. Her phone buzzed again. A text this time, from an unfamiliar number. Meeting at 10 a.m. tomorrow. 23rd floor, Jordan Foundation Building. Ask for Ms. Patel. Dress comfortable but neat. No signature. It didn't need one. Tiana set the phone down carefully on the coffee table, as if it might explode. She sat there a long time, watching the minutes crawl across the digital clock. Part of her wanted to bury herself under the blanket and pretend none of this had happened. But another part, the part that had carried her through college nights working 2 jobs, through shifts where customers refused to meet her eyes, through mornings when she wondered if it was all worth it, that part stirred now. It wasn't weakness to accept help when it was offered with respect. It was strength to recognize your own worth when someone else saw it, too. Slowly, Tiana stood. Her legs ached from how long she had been curled up, but she moved with deliberate care toward the closet. She flipped through her clothes, server blacks, a couple of faded t-shirts, the one good dress she saved for interviews. Her fingers lingered on it. Tomorrow, she would show up. Not because she owed anyone gratitude. Not because she needed saving. But because she had earned the right to be seen. The next morning, the wind whipped off Lake Michigan, slicing through Tiana's coat as she hurried down Michigan Avenue. The Jordan Foundation building stood like a fortress of glass and steel, sleek and gleaming against the gray sky. For a moment, Tiana hesitated outside the revolving doors, her reflection staring back at her, small, shivering, out of place. She tucked her chin into her scarf, drew a steadying breath, and pushed through. Inside, the warmth and brightness hit her like a physical force. The lobby was alive with movement. Young people in smart blazers carrying clipboards, families trailing wide-eyed children, security guards who actually smiled when they checked IDs. It didn't feel like the world she had come from. It didn't feel like Beaumont's. A woman in a tailored navy dress approached her at the front desk, tablet in hand. "Ms. Brooks?" she asked, her voice brisk but kind. Tiana nodded. "Right this way. I'm Miss Patel. Mr. Jordan is expecting you." They moved through the lobby, up a bank of elevators that hummed silently to the 23rd floor. As they rose, Tiana wiped her palms against her coat, fighting the tremble of nerves. She couldn't afford to fall apart now. The doors slid open to a smaller, sunlit reception area. Beyond a glass wall, she could see a handful of people gathered around a long conference table, laughing quietly, papers spread out in front of them. It wasn't intimidating. It was normal, human. Miss Patel led her into a small meeting room furnished simply, a round table, a few chairs, a coffee machine tucked in the corner. And sitting at the table, flipping through a folder, was Michael Jordan. He looked up as they entered, pulled off his reading glasses, and smiled, not the polished public smile from TV interviews, but something smaller. "Real." "Tiana," he said, standing and extending his hand. She crossed the room on legs that felt half-broken, half-buoyed by adrenaline. She took his hand, firm and steady, and shook it. "Thank you for coming," he said, guiding her to a chair. "Thank you for reaching out," she managed, hating how small her voice sounded. Michael leaned back in his seat, folding his arms comfortably across his chest. "I heard about what happened. I'm sorry you had to go through that." Tiana stared down at the table for a second, trying to find the right response. "I'm fine" felt like a lie. "It's no big deal" felt like betrayal. She settled on the truth. It wasn't right. But it's not new. Michael nodded, slow and thoughtful. "I know." He paused, then added, "That's why I wanted to meet you." Tiana lifted her eyes cautiously. She was half expecting a charity offer, a soft desk job to make herself disappear, a nice gesture so he could feel better. But Michael's gaze was steady, uncompromising. "I run a few foundations," he said. "Youth programs, scholarship funds, community outreach. I need people who understand what respect looks like. People who treat everyone with dignity, not just the people they think matter." He paused, letting the words sink in. "And after what I saw at Beaumont's," he said, "I know you're one of those people." Tiana blinked, stunned. "You don't even know me," she whispered. Michael smiled again, small and sure. "I know enough." He slid a folder across the table, neat documents, a job description, a benefits packet. Real things. Real commitment. "We have an opening for a community liaison," he said. "You'd work with local organizations, help run events, mentor younger staff. It's not glamorous, but it's important." Tiana stared at the folder, her heart thudding so loud she was sure he could hear it. It wasn't a handout. It wasn't pity. It was an invitation. It was a chance to belong somewhere that didn't ask her to be smaller. Her throat tightened, and for a terrifying moment, she thought she might cry. She blinked hard, steadying herself. "Why me?" she asked. Michael leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. "Because you treated me like a person when everyone else treated me like a prize," he said simply. "Because you saw me. And people like you, people who see others, are the ones who change things." The room seemed to tilt slightly around her. Tiana swallowed against the lump in her throat, forcing herself to breathe. She wasn't a server anymore. She wasn't a nobody. She was Tiana Brooks. And she had been seen. Tiana signed the papers with hands that didn't shake. The pen moved steadily across the page, carving a new chapter into her life, one she hadn't dared dream was possible just 48 hours ago. When she handed the folder back to Ms. Patel, the woman smiled, a real one, not the tight, transactional smiles of Beaumont's. "Welcome to the team," Ms. Patel said. Tiana's throat tightened again, but she nodded, swallowing the emotion down. "Thank you for trusting me." Michael Jordan, standing near the window with a coffee in hand, turned and caught her eye. "We don't hire people to save them," he said. "We hire them because they're already doing the work." Tiana didn't have words for the way that landed inside her, deep, solid, immovable. She left the building with a packet of orientation materials tucked under her arm and a brand-new security badge clipped to her coat. The sky above the city was a cold, merciless blue. The kind that stretched forever. The kind that dared you to believe in the impossible. As she stepped onto the sidewalk, her phone buzzed again. At first, she ignored it, still too dazed, too full of newness to deal with anything else. But the second buzz, and then the third, pulled her attention. It was Mia, the hostess from Beaumont's. "Girl, have you seen the news?" Another text, from a college friend she hadn't spoken to in months. "Is that the place you worked?" OMG. Curious and wary, Tiana opened her browser. There, plastered across local news sites and social media feeds, was the headline. NBA legend Michael Jordan calls out Chicago restaurant for discriminatory practices after firing waitress who treated him with respect. Tiana stared at the screen, her heart thudding in her ears. There was no quote from her. No interview. No mention of her name, just anonymous sources confirming a young black server had been fired after serving Jordan too attentively. The article recounted everything: the cold treatment from other staff, the manager's instructions, the firing the next morning. Michael Jordan hadn't named Beaumont's directly, he didn't have to. The details were sharp enough for anyone to recognize the place. The backlash hit instantly. Comments flooded in hundreds, thousands, people vowing to boycott, celebrities retweeting the story, activists demanding accountability. Tiana scrolled, numb and overwhelmed. A part of her, the part that had been trained to stay small, to survive quietly, wanted to hide, wanted to shut off her phone, pull the covers over her head, and wait for the world to forget. But another part, the part that had chosen to walk across that restaurant floor with dignity, lifted her chin. She hadn't asked for a spotlight. She hadn't sought revenge. She had just done what was right. And now, for once, the world wasn't pretending it didn't see. Her phone buzzed again, this time with a call. Unknown number. Tiana hesitated, thumb hovering over the screen. Then, slowly, she answered. "Hello." A woman's voice came through, sharp, brittle. "Tiana, this is Mr. Caldwell's office." A tight breath. "We'd like to talk about bringing you back. There's been some misunderstanding. Tiana closed her eyes for a moment, listening to the brittle panic threading through the woman's voice. Once, she might have jumped at the offer. Once, she might have clutched at it like a lifeline. But not now. "I appreciate the call," Tiana said, her voice calm and measured. "But I'm not interested." There was a stunned silence on the other end. Tiana hung up before they could find the words to argue. She set the phone down, folded her hands in her lap, and let herself sit there for a long, quiet moment. The city roared outside. The future waited, wide and terrifying and new. And for the first time in a long time, Tiana wasn't afraid. The following Monday, Tiana stood outside the Jordan Foundation's front doors, badge clipped neatly to her coat, tote bag slung over her shoulder. This time, she didn't hesitate. She stepped inside, greeted the receptionist by name, and rode the elevator up to the 23rd floor with a quiet steadiness she hadn't realized she possessed. The office was alive with a different kind of energy, bright, pulsing with purpose. Posters lined the walls, scholarship recipients grinning in caps and gowns, kids laughing on basketball courts, volunteers stacking books at food drives. It didn't scream prestige. It hummed service. Miss Patel met her at the entrance to the open workspace, handing her a small stack of folders. Orientation materials, she said warmly. And your first assignment. You'll be shadowing Mr. Harris on the youth mentorship project. Tiana took the folders with steady hands. Thank you. I'm excited to get started. And she was. Truly. She spent the morning absorbing everything, the mission statements, the grant schedules, the names and faces of the kids they served. Every file she opened reminded her why she was here, not to survive, not to blend in, but to build something. Around noon, Miss Patel led her down the hall to the community room, a large, sun-drenched space scattered with mismatched couches, bulletin boards, and the faint smell of coffee. Inside, a few dozen teenagers laughed and joked around folding tables covered in construction paper and pizza boxes. Tiana froze for a half-second at the door, the familiar pinch of anxiety curling in her stomach. What if I don't fit in here either? But then one of the kids, a tall girl in a neon hoodie, caught her eye and grinned. Hey, you knew, she called. Tiana smiled, the tension easing from her shoulders. Yeah, first day. Well, come on, new girl, the girl said, waving her over. We need judges for the ugly sweater contest. And you look too smart to trust these fools. Laughter rippled through the room. Tiana crossed the threshold without another thought. Later that afternoon, sitting at her new desk by the window, Tiana pulled out her phone and scrolled through the news. She hadn't allowed herself to look all weekend, but now curiosity tugged. Beaumont's was all over the headlines again. Boycotts expand over restaurant discrimination scandal. Multiple staff resign amidst backlash. Beaumont's owner issues public apology. Too little, too late? Social media was merciless. Celebrities posted cryptic but cutting tweets. Yelp reviews plummeted into the abyss. A peaceful protest had even popped up outside the restaurant over the weekend, young people holding signs that read "Respect is not optional." Tiana set the phone down without finishing the article. She didn't need to read every word. She didn't need the play-by-play. The world was already doing what it needed to do. She didn't have to lift a finger. She didn't have to stain her dignity with bitterness. She just had to keep building. At the edge of her desk sat a small frame, a photo of her mother, taken the day she graduated high school, arms wrapped tight around a younger, teary-eyed Tiana. Her mother's smile, wide and fierce, seemed to shine straight through the glass. Tiana touched the edge of the frame lightly, a whisper of a prayer in her chest. I'm still your girl, but I'm not hiding anymore. Outside the window, the city stretched wide and golden under the late afternoon sun. The streets shimmered with possibilities. Tiana turned back to her work. There were futures to build. A week later, Tiana found herself standing at the edge of Marquette Park. The same cracked basketball courts where she used to ride her bike as a kid stretched out before her. The old oak trees that shaded her childhood summers still loomed, their bare branches scratching at the cold November sky. She tucked her hands into the pockets of her coat, breathing in the sharp, smoky air that always seemed to cling to the south side this time of year, like memory itself. Behind her, the community center buzzed with life. Kids laughing, sneakers squeaking, volunteers calling out instructions. Inside, a Jordan Foundation mentorship event was winding down, the first she had helped organize. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't shiny. It wasn't a corner office with a view. It was real. Tiana watched as a little boy, maybe 7 or 8, fumbled a basketball, chased it down, and hurled it toward the hoop with more heart than aim. The ball missed by a mile, bouncing off the pole and rolling toward her feet. She bent down, scooped it up, and held it out. The boy looked up at her, cheeks flushed from the cold, grinning wide. Can you show me how to do it right? He asked. Tiana smiled, feeling something ease loose in her chest, a knot she hadn't realized she was still carrying. She spun the ball once in her hands, feeling its worn texture under her fingertips. First rule, she said, crouching down to his level. You don't have to do it right the first time. You just have to keep trying. The boy nodded solemnly, taking the ball back with both hands. He ran off, arms flailing, the ball bouncing awkwardly against the pavement. Tiana stood, watching him go, her breath turning to smoke in the air. Behind her, the door to the community center creaked open. Ms. Patel leaned out, clipboard in hand. "We're wrapping up, Tiana. You coming?" Tiana turned, the city lights flickering behind her like stars caught in concrete. "Yeah," she said, voice steady. "I'm coming." As she walked back toward the building, she caught a glimpse of herself reflected in the glass doors. Hair loose in the wind, face unguarded, eyes bright. Not small, not invisible. Seen. Belonging to herself, at last. And this was just the beginning.